All right. And welcome Amy Wong to the podcast. It is just such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Thanks for having me.
And we were just talking a minute ago that we both of us haven't visited each other's cities. You're out in Berkeley, California. I'm here in
Yeah.
Miami, Florida, and we said we need to do that switch.
That's right. It's funny. I've always wanted to go to Miami. My husband's always wanted to go to Miami. We've never made it happen, but now we got a great excuse. So, hey.
Yeah, it's there's so much to do here, as I'm sure is over in California
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
Thank you for being here, and I just want to say thank you for writing this book,
Mm.
"Living on Purpose: 5 Deliberate Choices to Realize Fulfillment and Joy." I have loved reading it. I have annotated like crazy in everything because so much of it resonates with me, and I think part of your story, although our stories are different, so much of your journey I can see myself in because it's the human struggle,
Yeah.
and then I see myself where I'm at now, and so all parts of the book have been resonating with me, and I've just loved the journey of reading it and getting to know you through your words. So thank you for putting this out into the world because I know writing a book is no easy feat
Yeah.
at all.
No, no, but thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before we get started to dive in, because I do have a lot about the book I want to talk about today, I'd like for you to just tell us what you were grateful for today, as I always ask my guests.
Yeah. You asked me that right before we went on. And immediately what popped up is, and this is so true for me, and I feel it and think about it all the time. And it's the love that I feel of my family. I
Mm,
think about this all the time. I'm so close with my kids, with my husband, with my parents, my sister, my brother. There's so much love, and I'm so grateful for that. It just buoys me. Yeah.
yeah, I have a friend that says those, time with family are the golden moments.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. And I'm
Yeah.
very close to my family too. I've got one sister. I've got my parents who are still alive. They're in their late 80s, and I'm so blessed to still have them around. And then I have
Mm.
my 19-year-old daughter who's in her sophomore year of high school. I mean, not high school. What am I saying? College
I
already.
know.
College,
College.
college.
Oh
Crazy.
gosh, I can't imagine. Mine's
Yeah.
14. I can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
But
It goes by in a
yeah.
flash, I tell
Yeah.
you. So that's why it is important to spend all those moments present with them.
Yeah.
So, Amy, let's talk a little bit about living on purpose. And there's many schools of thought out there about purpose and this big thing of we oftentimes feel like it's this big thing we have to accomplish. I want to hear your sort of idea of what your definition is of always being on purpose and how you said it
Yeah.
requires intentional choice.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for the question. And I think it's really important to clarify that, there are many ways in which we can consider purpose as a word. And purpose as a noun, as I think I've heard you
Mhm.
reference it here, that is of topic in the book, and not super overtly, but the way I focus on this is really more of an adverb. And so it's being on purpose, which is really more of a way of being
Yes.
versus some like, oh, I'm here to solve the problem of hunger in the world as a purpose. It's so while that absolutely interests me, and that really is finding that purpose, or at least that focal point, is a part of the bigger conversation of being on purpose. I would say, to me, being on purpose as a way of being really is a practice that that captures our dedication to thriving.
Hmm.
And the reason I say it's on purpose is because it requires us to be awake. So
Yeah.
many of us are on autopilot. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of the way the human brain works. And I feel like at this day and age where we've got so much bombarding us with so much stimulus, and we are in a what's called an attention economy, where people are vying for our attention, we are increasingly becoming more numb, and it's easier to really fall into that autopilot. Again, it's not that there's anything wrong, but the opportunity is that when we wake up from autopilot and we decide to be in the driver's seat, what that means is that we're going to harness our moments, recognizing that each moment really is a choice point where I'm going to choose to react to life, which is most of what we do,
Right.
or I'm going to respond. And so what does respond mean? It means to actively choose to show up in that moment. But what does that mean? So it's choice at all level. And it's not so much choice at the level of action, which most
Mhm.
people think about. It's like, okay, so I'm going to be very deliberate and I'm going to make sure that I have a really healthy lunch instead of eating that burrito that I want to eat. Or I'm going to choose to go work out instead of sit on the couch and watch Seinfeld reruns. And so it's not so much choice at that level. It's really more so choice at the level of interpretation, at perception, right? So stuff happens, we've got a choice of how we're going to respond to that stuff. What do we make it mean? What do we interpret? What do we believe? And so it's a way of being that really does lead us into a purposeful way of life where you're going to be more in tune with, gosh, why am I here? What do I want to make this about?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love that, and it makes so much sense. But I do see what you're saying, where you have to sort of be awake. You have to be
Mhm.
aware
Yeah.
of the fact that you're on autopilot to begin with, right? So that then you can make the choice to say, okay, I'm on autopilot. This doesn't feel good to me. It
Hmm.
doesn't feel like I'm engaging with life. I'm not feeling present or I'm getting anything out of it. I'm just going from one thing to the
Yeah.
next, the dreaded to-do list, as I always
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And so making that choice to say, okay, what what does a life that's filled with intention and filled
Yeah.
with feeling purposeful or on
Right.
purpose look like, and
Yeah.
starting there, right?
Right. And I would say absolutely. And I would say, and it's not, we know we're in autopilot when we keep recreating a life that we're not totally happy with, or it's not that it's like, I keep doing that thing I don't want to do. I keep living into that same, like I keep recreating the same situation. Like, why is it, I keep ending up in the same kind of job. I said I wanted something different. I said I wasn't going to show up like this in my relationships and I keep doing it anyway. And it's so we can tell we're in autopilot when it kind of feels like we're not really, when it feels like we're holding ourselves back somehow. That's when we know we're on autopilot.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And you talk about, so this kind of leads to when we sort of awaken, we have what you call defining moments
Hmm.
in the book. And I know that you said the defining moments, both positive and negative, are how we that they're crucial components of our personal narratives.
Yeah.
So you had a very specific defining moment that sort of kind of started the path to where you are today. I'd love for you to share that with us.
Oh my gosh. I almost feel like all of them are. Like, are you referencing the awakening in my
Yes,
closet or
in your closet.
in my
In your
closet, that one?
closet,
Okay.
yeah, after you
Okay.
had your son.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So it's funny because now where I'm at right now, all of my defining moments, I really see how it was totally on purpose to get me where I'm at. So I could easily have said it was, my eating disorder in 15. I was like, so all of it really is relevant. But the big one that really catapulted me from an old way of being into this way of being was I had hit I had hit a real wall. And what had happened was I had given birth to my first child, who's now 14. And everything I thought life was going to be like, it wasn't that. And really what I was struggling with was this feeling of I was lost. It was not so much an emptiness as it more so a lostness. And so that giving birth to Aiden, my entire world, which was here, immediately now was there. And what's fascinating about this, and this happens, I think, for all mothers, all parents, is that, and you can't describe it. You can only it's one of those things you just will experience it. You don't know what it feels like to have the center of your world up and move forever. And what I mean is, you start in a self centered way, and that's the necessary way. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, now it's this child that I am so responsible for, and everything gets completely rearranged, and it's almost like you have in a totally different lens and dimension to look through at your life. And that reorganization of all things due to this life event was what woke me up to, oh my gosh, I'm not my job. And that was fascinating to me because I had worked so hard all of my life to get to this point that I thought it was about. I worked super hard in school. I was neurotic, obsessive compulsive, like over 4.0 IG, like just crazy, super obsessive. Got to a point where I was really quite successful, had a lot to be proud of. But then after Aiden was born, it was like, wait, but hold on, I don't want to go back to that. But if I don't go back, not because I want to really be home all the time, but that's not what's important anymore. But if that's not what's important, then what is? And oh my gosh, who am I? And so struggling with that for a handful of months leading up, through maternity leave, I had a moment of surrender in my closet. I had just hit that culmination point where it's like I don't know what to do. And it's interesting because, I think a lot of mothers go through this, parents go through this, and we don't really have words to talk about it.
Right.
And what happened for me was just a pure moment of complete organic surrender. I could call it that now. I couldn't call it then, but it just literally threw my hands out to the side. I was like, I give up. And what I said was, you show me the way.
Right.
And I have no idea who I was talking to, because I really don't pray to a God like that. And I don't think about it that way, but it came out of my mouth. And what was so fascinating was that I was immediately answered in a way that I cannot describe, but it was as if like the wisdom and the knowledge just downloaded and reorganized all my cells and gave me the message that, well, Amy, you're going about it all wrong. Changed me in an instant. Very powerful.
I love the message. Can you repeat the message?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it just feels so, when people hear this, they're like, yeah, here's the message. So Amy, you are going about this all wrong. It's not about figuring it out. It's about feeling it out. And what was so profound, Jeanette, what was so profound was that as a concept, like, so I got that message, not as a concept, like it literally embedded in my cells and changed my perception in a moment. And then from that point forward, the way in which I perceived, the way in which I operated and navigated was completely different. And it was absolutely, and it showed me a world that all of us have access to, but none of us know how to tap into, because we aren't taught this. We're taught to follow the formula. Do good so you get good grades, so you get a good job, make a lot of money.
Cause and effect. Cause and effect.
That's
Cause and
exactly
effect. That's how I see it. And we sort of just feel like, well, everybody's doing it like that. Everybody's, trying to be successful. Everyone's trying to get the 4.8 GPA and so on. And you're like, I should too.
Yeah.
Right. We never stop to think, what is it that I really want and what really makes me feel fulfilled? I don't even want to say happy, joyful, fulfilled, alive. Like I'm here, I'm contributing, right?
Right.
There's something that I marked in your book in this specific area, and I wrote next to it 100%. And it says, everything you want, everything you think you want, everything you desire is not a thing at all. You want the feeling you believe those things are going to give you.
That's
and
right.
I was like, yes, amen.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And this seems so obvious once we start talking about it. And this is the big unlock for so many folks. And really it's that, we as human beings, we have desires, we have dreams, we have goals, we have visions. And, we can all say it's all because we ultimately want to feel good. Great. But really, if you look at all the things that you got going on, all the projects, all the things you wish for, your vision boards, all that stuff, like we get caught into thinking, oh, it's the thing that we want. But really, no. We want the feeling we think we would have as a result of having that thing. And what we don't check and what we don't take all the way is, well, what do I want to feel? What is it that I want to feel? And so we're really good at asking, what do I want? We're usually thinking, what do I want to achieve? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to gain? And so it stops at the thing, but we never really take it all the way. Will that thing give me the desired feeling state I want? And if we get so good at getting stuck at the thing, we oftentimes will chase the thing, which is figuring it out. How do we figure out our way to the thing? And often in the process of doing that, we forsake the feeling we want, because it's in direct opposition of the actual feeling we want. And so everything we want is a feeling. And I would encourage, for anyone listening in, really check that out for yourself. Like, and for example, you could say, well, I really want a new job because and she's like, okay, well, what is it that you think why? And first it's like, well, I want the status, I want the prestige, I want the money. Okay, but honestly, why? Keep going. Well, I want to feel challenged. I want to feel significant. I want to feel respected. I want to feel at ease. But to really fill it out and all that stuff in the middle, like that's great, but that's not why you're going for it. Yeah.
Yeah, just getting very clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that though when we have the mental chatter that just doesn't stop and
Oh,
we don't know how to bypass it so that we can listen to the inspiration or the impulses or that whispers of spirit that's within us? I tell you,
mm,
I could have probably worn a shirt that says, I overanalyze everything, a t-shirt, because that used to be me. It was like, give me a second, gotta overanalyze that.
yeah.
And I've learned to just stop and
Oh,
pause and just not listen anymore and just drop into my body. I would say within the last 2 years, that's been a lot of my work, is to
yeah.
drop into my body and just
Mm,
connect to
yes.
what I'm feeling. It hasn't been easy because
No,
the
and
mind
it's
is a really powerful thing. So what would you suggest to a listener right now that's like,
yeah.
that sounds great, Amy, but this just doesn't stop up here?
Oh gosh, well, welcome to being human.
Right.
That's the first thing I would say. Say, gosh, yeah, join the rest of us. And then I would say, there's dropping into the body is one thing, and right, and really being able to feel into like what feels expansive versus constrictive, what feels like the energy's down here kind of lower in my body versus really frenzied up in my head, because that's really the first steps we want to take into feeling it out, like where
Yeah.
we want to follow the feeling that's expansive. And so we want to just set the intention that this is something you're going to listen to, because right now, un without full conscious awareness, what's happening is this: we put the spotlight on our thinking minds, but we get to switch this, we control the spotlight. And so simply by intending, okay, I really want to listen to what feels expansive, to what feels like the and I always say feeling it out versus figuring it out is the path of least resistance to the path of most abundance. And
Yeah.
so when you keep that in mind, okay, I intend to really feel into this and feel for what's like, because my wisdom, my embodied wisdom is going to tell me a lot. So the intention is first. And then here's what I'd say for all of us that are overanalyzing. It's usually because we fall into the trap of choice number two. And so this is where it's a perfect segue. Like I'm going to bring this in because
Hmm.
sometimes we have to take a look at our logic in order to unlock the ability to
Yes.
be with ourselves in a new way. Now the choices in the book, there are 5 of them, and they're written in an order that kind of makes sense as I tell the story and take people on a journey. However, they're totally independent of one another, and you can take these on in any way you want, and you can go in any order. So what I'll do is I'll share with you choice number 2, because choice number 2, when you really get this, it makes choice number 1 a heck of a lot easier. And actually vice versa. But choice number 2 is you got to choose to know that there is no way things or you should be. Period. There is no should
That's
reality
Yeah,
out there.
we're going to talk about should in a second, but
Yeah.
that is something that I had to really dig deep for myself,
Yeah.
because I guess we all do get into this head of this is what it needs to look like. So I have
Yes.
this idea of my business, for example, or
Yeah.
this party or this whatever, that
Yeah.
you're putting out into the world, and this is the way it needs to look like. And sometimes we get very headstrong about it. And what I've noticed with myself is when I've done that, things just don't, it's just harder. It seems like I'm fighting, it's like
Yeah.
you're trying to kind of climb uphill.
Yeah.
And when I sort of back off and let go and just relax and open up,
Yes.
things start to flow a little more, right? So
And that's
I've
it.
learned to listen, and the
That's it. And
listening
that's it.
usually
You
is
see? Yeah,
back
that's the
off.
precursor. That's the precursor, because we got to create that space for listening. So what's
Yeah.
getting in the way of that space? It is this habit that we have, that we're trying to line up with this imaginary ideal that there's a way things should be. And then you're like, wait, should according to who? According to what imaginary big book in the sky that says this is how you got to do it if you're going to do it right? Well, it doesn't exist. And
Right.
so
Which is
unless we check that out, we're going to hold ourselves hostage to that. And if we hold ourselves hostage to that unknowingly, then we're going to overanalyze. And unless we actually check out what drives that overanalyzing, it doesn't leave us much space to really, as you said, to kind of let go, to drop in, to actually listen and hear other information. It's there. It's just being drowned out by that. And so, yeah, that engine of the
Yeah.
should engine is fascinating.
Right, which is what you say, and I love that you dedicated like a whole chapter to just eliminating the word should from our vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the title. I should you not.
I should you not.
I should you
And it's
not.
just, and I also believe that that's why it's so important for us to be paying attention to, you know, what we speak and the words that we put out there,
Mm,
to catch ourselves when we are shoulding and just sort of say, okay, nope.
that's right.
That's, we can just reframe that sentence into something different. You talk about that should causes a lot of resistance,
Oh, it's
in ours, and you define resistance, and I love this, as an output of effort and energy in a direction that does absolutely nothing. It's like you're going nowhere because you're shooting and it's causing resistance. It's like you're pushing up against, you
yeah,
know, like 100-pound wall and you can't do it. So
right.
can you give us some examples of what, when we're in resistance?
Oh, 100%. And so, oh my goodness, we could do, I just get so excited about this conversation because this is such an eye opener. And so I'll
Yes,
start by saying that let me define resistance and kind of how
please.
I'm thinking about this here. And what's so important, and really what breathes life into all of this, I'm going to say, quote unquote, argument that I propose here in the book about the word should, is that if you take all of the emotions you could ever feel in the world and you map them like on a scale, and here's neutral in the middle, and all the positive emotions are above neutral, increasing in positivity, and then all the negative emotions decreasing and or increasing in negativity. Everything below neutral is caused by one thing. And when you get this, it is a game changer. And it's this. Here you are in your life. The moment you resist what is, boom, you drop below neutral. Any negative emotion that you experience is purely a measure of resistance to what is. And so now you can think of every negative emotion as a measure of resistance. And so it's what do I mean by this? You're pushing against reality. You're pushing against what is. So what is that? It's essentially, I don't want this, right? I don't want this. It's like when we're in traffic. I don't want
Yeah.
this. Well, guess what? You're in it. Can you do anything about it? No, unless you're Inspector Gadget with like a car that flies,
Right.
you're kind of stuck. And so to sit there and push against it, again, does nothing except eat up your resources. And what do I mean by that? Like, this takes resources. It's how we build muscle. So there is good forms of resistance, right? I want to build muscle,
Sure.
great. But for the all the other ways in which we sustain resistance, it really doesn't serve us. This does nothing but just eat up my inner resources. And it keeps me negative. And so pushing against what is just overt not wanting, that's resistance. Judgment. Judgment is resistance. Judgment, what is that? You should be different. I should be different. This should be different. So essentially, a should on self, a should on others, and a should on circumstance, right? And so, really, what I point out is that should, the word should is a hallmark indicator that you're pushing against what is. Now, there's a lot to this. Like, so we might think, well, this is how we create change in the world. And I'd say, well, it's, I use this analogy often. I don't know if everyone's going to be able to see this, but I've got this really heavy pitcher of water right here next to me that I'm holding up. It's about 5 pounds. I'm like, well, here's the example. I'm having this conversation with you, Jeanette. And if I had any bit of resistance going on with me, like I wanted this to be different, I should have shown up earlier. I should have worn a different shirt. Oh, I should have prepped for this. And to the degree I have shoulds running in the background, let's imagine that the weight of this picture is the degree of my shoulds and my judgment. That's like me holding this out
Yeah.
while I'm having this conversation with you. Now, I can do this, but that's kind of distracting, and it's going to keep me from being really innovative and keep me really present with you. And so shoulds, really, it's the reason should feel so bad is because we're focused on pushing away what we don't want more than we're focusing on what we actually want. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of negative consequence to that. And that's really what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, so many nuggets of good wisdom there. Thank you for that. But I see how it also, when you mentioned, being stuck in traffic, and here you are, just upset, and I should have left the house earlier, I shouldn't be stuck in traffic or whatnot. It's the other thing I see with that is that now you're approaching whoever you're approaching, wherever you get to, with this energy,
Mm-hmm.
with this energy of not feeling great, and then you go about negativity with anyone else that you come in contact with.
Yeah.
So that it's sort of, becomes a bit of a spiral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a trajectory, and really it's a trajectory you walk on that presents a reality in and of itself. It's interesting. I've got an example I'll share. It was really fascinating.
Sure.
I was doing a satellite media tour for the book, and this was probably this was in July. And my husband came along with me, and we're having a blast. But it was just whirlwind, lots of travel. And we got to race back because I have a workshop with Salesforce. It's so busy, right? And so finished the media tour, and I'm in the Uber on the way to the airport, and we're doing an evening flight to get back to California. And
Wow.
I get a notification from American Airlines saying your flight's been bumped like hours, which means that we wouldn't get home until it was going to be a red eye. And I'm like, and like immediately. So, all the context around travel, everybody
Yes.
just wants to
Yeah.
judge it. So I felt for a moment that ping of resistance, like, no, right? And so what happens is most of us say, this shouldn't be happening. And then we're like,
Right.
stewing on it. And it's like, oh man, gosh darn them. And
Somebody needs to pay for this.
right. And so when we stay in that mode of pushing against, we really squeeze out possibility because we're very narrow-mindedly focusing on pushing away what we don't want, that we don't blow open the bandwidth to be able to identify other options. And so so with being human, you're gonna feel that like, but for
Yeah.
me, I don't stay there for long at all. And it's like, okay, okay, what can we do? Great. United. Go to United. I'm going to see if we can find a flight. Oh, amazing. So immediately, literally within 5 minutes of that first ping of got moved, because essentially it was, okay, well, I could try to move this flight. I could try to see what else is there, but let's just immediately go to another airline. And
Right.
within 5 minutes, we got on a flight that was literally scheduled to like within 20 minutes of what this one
Wow.
that got us home. It was a direct flight, in fact, that got us home even sooner.
You see.
So immediately fix that problem in less than 5 minutes of that. And so as we get to the airport, we're walking through, and we're now going to the United counter instead of the American counter. And oh my goodness, it looked like this angry mob of people totally around the American Airlines. And because you know what? They're all doing this.
The same
All
thing.
doing this.
Yeah.
And when you get stuck in the pushing against because it's wrong, it shouldn't happen, we squeeze out what else is possible. And so I share that because quickly okay, hold on. Nope, no resistance. United. And so I'm able to walk down a new trajectory. And so this is where, again, it's the path of least resistance to the path of most abundance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that story. And it just makes a lot of sense. You didn't use up your energy, right? Like you said before, getting all upset and, moaning and groaning about something. You felt the pain because it's,
Oh yeah, you're
and you
gonna feel
moved
it.
on.
Yeah.
You're going to feel it.
That's right. That's right.
So I have to say, I love chapter 5, and I have to say, the title of it is Manure Makes Beautiful Blossoms.
Yes.
I was like, that's brilliant. That is a brilliant chapter title. And what you talk about here, Amy, is that we have the power to see how we shift things. The sort of manure, or in Spanish, caca, of our lives, that we have, that come up, the adversity, the obstacles, the difficulties in our lives. But we can always, like you said before, is we can always choose, how to respond and how we see things, and see that it is happening for us, not to us.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about this chapter and what you talk about, the shadows of our human existence in these moments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's helpful to kind of j- just share what I notice here about this plane of existence. And, when we look out at the world and we look at how this plane of existence operates, there's this very real thing of duality, right? And so you can't have up without down. You cannot have birth without death. You cannot feel joy without pain, right? And so everything that we are experiencing can only really happen because of the presence of its opposite. And so we get this innately, yet we don't really attend to what this totally means in terms of our growth. And I think just because of how we're conditioned, how we grow up, and what we value and what we learn to value because of what we're told to value, we want to hold on to all the stuff that's done. It's in the light, right? So it's interesting. Since I've written the book, I've been doing quite a few workshops and offsites.
Nice.
And interestingly, a new distinction has popped up that has just been so delightful. So I don't talk about this in the book, but it's only been happening as a result of the conversations.
Nice.
But thanks. Yeah, it's really fun. And what I've recognized is that, oh my goodness, when it comes to our growth, there's two ways in which we grow. We either grow on purpose or we grow by accident. Either way, we're growing. And as humans, we tend to just want to focus on the stuff that was the growth on purpose. Yeah, I wanted this. I chose this. This was great. It was in the plan. But it's the growth by accident we tend to not want to focus on because we didn't plan for it. It usually is because we failed or because we made a mistake or because of it was pain. And so we make that wrong. But really what this book is about, or what this chapter is about, is hold on. Both are necessary. So
Yeah.
why push this one away? Because the reality is crap's going to happen. It's just the way it goes. I mean, I think it was Marshall Goldsmith that I heard this from in a long, 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 long time ago. And I just loved it. He said, we just have to expect that there's a high probability that low probability events are going to come and sideswipe us every so often. And I'm like, if that's not life at its
Yeah.
core, that's right. And so we have to recognize, okay, we are going to get dealt stuff that we didn't anticipate, and we're going to
Yes.
get dealt stuff that's going to hurt. And you know what? We probably want to celebrate that, because if it wasn't for these things, we wouldn't actually know the good things. But here's really what it's about. It's saying yes to that. It's instead of saying no to it, instead of resisting it, it's saying, okay, I'm going to give you a seat at the table. And you know what? Instead of looking at you as shitty moments, because that really sucked when I got fired. It really sucked when, my dog died. It really sucked. Those are awful, shitty moments. But I'm going to compost this into manure,
Yeah.
because it's how many times, and this is every time, all of us in our now moment will look back to our past,
Right.
and we will be like, oh my gosh, that was so awful. Oh my gosh, do you remember that? Like, oh, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't be here. And so
So
very
true.
often we'll be in our now moment and we'll look back to the shitty moments and be like, actually, it was kind of on purpose for me to get here. And so we do this without fail. And so why not get really good at doing it in our present? So if we're dealing with crappy moments now, instead of waiting for our future self to tell us how our crap turns out, just do it now and be like, you know what?
Absolutely.
This is going to be on purpose to my vision later on in life. So why not just see this as growth by accident? Because I grow, and I think I grow better. And I think most of us have more significant growth with the growth by accident than we do in the
Sure.
growth on purpose. Yeah.
Sure. For sure. I'll share that back in December. I've shared it on my podcast before, on my solo episode back in December of 2021. I discovered missing hair, like huge hair patches missing here and back here.
Wow.
And it turned out to be alopecia areata. And long story short, of course, that hurt. That there was a lot of resistance on my part with that, not wanting it to be, obviously. Eventually, I got past it, and it's shifted the trajectory of what I'm doing now, and so there's more of a focus on well-being
Mhm.
and so on in my coaching practice. So um, yeah, I can totally relate to that, and how we have to just again be present to what's before us, and just sometimes get the clarity to ask ourselves, what is
Yeah.
this moment here to teach me?
Yeah.
How can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Um, Now, like you said,
Yeah.
not look back later
Yeah.
on.
And the best part of that is really, it's not just because it makes you feel better, but really what you're doing is you're actively converting resistance to appreciation.
Right.
And like, and when you go from resistance, remember that's in a negative state. You go
Mhm.
all the way up to appreciation. That's, you get a lot of creative momentum going at that point.
Sure.
So it is very
Absolutely.
generative practice. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome and inner opposition, because that's something that I think all of us, whether you are the CEO of a $1 billion company, or you're somebody who works behind the counter at, at a McDonald's or Burger King or something to that effect, I think everyone can relate to that feeling of sometimes having, like, we're trying to hide something, and what if they find out, so
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about both
Oh,
of those, imposter syndrome and inner opposition, for
for
us.
sure. For sure. Well, I'll start with this because I think this has been really helpful for others to hear. And it's what we're talking about right now was a big reason why I wrote the book. And, so in my work, I work a lot with leaders in companies and in startups, and their CEOs, their C-suite members, they're really, they're all across the board in leadership, but by and large, really well established and very successful individuals. And, I've been coaching for over a decade, and I've had, I'm not kidding, thousands upon thousands of conversations. And I feel so blessed because I have such an intimate view of just what the heck's going on for a
Mhm.
lot of us, and just and it is a lot. Just it is. I'm nothing but empathetic and compassionate to just human condition, but I have that privilege. Not everybody has the privilege of having thousands upon thousands of conversations to have this perspective. Now, what I found was exactly what you said. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO or if you're a founder or if you are, one of the top. You're gonna have these hidden fears of, oh my gosh, am I worthy enough? Am I good enough? Do they actually think I'm as smart as I like? Maybe I'm not as smart as they think? And so that self-doubt, that opposition we have with ourself, our value, our competency, our worth, our enoughness, like all of us entertain that. And here's what was fascinating to me was that everyone across the board thinks they're the only one.
Yeah.
They think they're the only one in that meeting that's totally worried about what other people are gonna think if they speak up. They think they're the only one that's gonna be found out as not good. Like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one that struggles with worrying that I don't belong here. And only because I've been having so many conversations, it's like, wait, no, everybody's
Yeah.
thinking this. And
Yes.
that's
You're
what
not
made me,
alone.
yeah, no, you are not alone. You are not alone. And we all silently suffer to some degree. Now, some of us are really good at managing that discomfort, and we
Right.
become so blind to it that it's really hard for us to access it. And then there are others that are really in touch with that discomfort. But across the board, all of us have a bit of experience of that self-doubt. Now, inner opposition is what that's how I've coined this resistance to our innate and our inherent
Right.
self-worth, our inherent wholeness. And so there's this like tug of war on the inside where it's like, oh, I want to be okay. I think I'm okay. Maybe I'm not. Oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Oh, do I really belong here? And it's just this like constant turmoil on the inside. And when I was becoming certified in conversational intelligence, which was
Mm.
I was going through starting in 2014 or so. I was really diving into the neuroscience of trust because I have such a passion for communication and all the ways in which we translate to connect and information to connect. When I learned about the neuroscience of rejection, oh my gosh, it was like, whoa, like the
Right.
clouds parted, and then everything that all the threads I'd been pulling on about the human condition and thriving, all of a sudden came together. And I'm like, this is it. This is how we form our beliefs, because we are doing everything we can to avoid being rejected
Yeah.
on a conscious and subconscious basis. And that's the human condition. And so all of us go through the process of forming beliefs that aren't right, like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, as a way of protecting ourselves from a very primal fear of rejection and
Yeah.
disconnection. And again, I was so enlightened, and then started working with my clients in this, and just crazy amazing transformations were happening. And I answered like, this has to be in book form. Like, this cannot be limited
Yeah,
to
your book
people.
talks a lot about that whole the inner opposition, the imposter syndrome, and all of that. And I'm glad you dedicated a lot of time to it. And tied into that, you say, one of our greatest fears is to be rejected. And you share with us as humans how our inner opposition results from a primal quest for safety
Yeah.
and an ultimate fear of rejection. And I want to go back to safety too, because we often use certain things to stay safe,
Yes.
right? We try to hide in a certain way, or avoid, or use I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but try to pretend, right,
Yes.
to fit in with others, as we have that other primal need
Yeah.
to belong, which is
Yeah.
very important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm spot on. And I always find it important to share, if folks don't already know, that, the brain is like just the most magnificent.
It is.
I don't even want to just narrow it down to this thing called organ. I mean, it's all parts of our
Mm-hmm.
system and body are incredible, but the brain's doing a lot of things. One of the things the brain's doing is also trying to keep you alive. And
Alive and
so in the
safe.
process of regulating energy, and in order to sustain you, it's also trying to keep you safe so that you can stay alive. And so to the brain's always looking out for
Yeah.
your safety, but the brain cannot differentiate between environmental threats and social threats.
Right.
Because, I mean, here's the punchline: rejection is death to the brain.
Mm.
I mean, think about it, because when an infant is born, that infant is entirely helpless and needs a caregiver to take care of said child in order to survive. And the brain knows that. Food, water, shelter will come if mom and dad buy in. And
Sure.
so there's a wiring that has us needing that sense of connection and belonging even before we need food, water, shelter. That wiring never goes away. And so
True.
rejection registers as physical pain in the brain, which I find fascinating. So I always share, as a side note, if anybody's ever dealing with rejection, you can take a Tylenol. It actually helps. It's in the same
Yeah, I
place.
remember reading it in your book. You said it's actually physically painful.
It's physically painful, right? And so, when you've got this amazing brain trying to keep you safe, and it can't differentiate between, tiger jumping out of a bush from your boss throwing you under a bus in a meeting,
Right.
really what's happening is then we're going to do everything we can to stay safe. So imposter syndrome is a great way of keeping ourselves kind of small, so we don't put ourselves out there, so that we don't potentially get found out. Because if we get found out as not good enough, oh my gosh, now I'm going to be seen as not favorable, not admirable. I'll be outside of the tribe. I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to die. It's kind of crazy. But these are all ways in which we're trying to stay safe. All of these
Yeah, and
things.
in staying safe and playing small, we oftentimes then don't step into our bigger purpose, right? As
Yeah,
we talked about that bigger purpose, we're just even living on purpose
that's right. That's
because
right.
we're just
Surviving.
trying to just survive.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so all of it's connected. All of this is connected in how we can truly, truly, truly wake up, thrive, and truly just live a life that we were born to live.
Yes. I think,
Yeah.
your book just, again, I could go on and on about it. It's just such a great, it just goes from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, leading you, like you said, on this journey of self-discovery, but in a way that's so accessible,
Mm.
because you put so much of yourself into it, your stories, your humor, which I loved and I resonated with. Um, and towards the end, Amy, you talk about some of the side effects, the common side
Oh yeah.
effects of when you decide to live your life on purpose. And that's unconditional compassion and
Yeah.
connection, which we just talked about, fearlessness,
Mhm.
appreciation, enthusiasm, and joy. So tell us what you want the listeners to know, just as a final piece about living on purpose.
Oh, I would say that really what it all comes, the most important thing to ever focus on, the most important thing to mind when it comes to truly living a life we love. If we want to thrive, if we really want to claim the life we were born to live, the single most important thing to mind is the relationship we have with ourselves.
Oof, yes.
And this is Truly, 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 truly. It sounds like a cliche, and it's so funny because it's like, oh, relationship with myself. Like it's like we
You
don't
gotta
even
love
really know what
yourself.
that means, you know?
Yeah.
It's so conceptual. And so I would say it's that whatever you choose to believe about yourself and whatever you choose to know about yourself really makes up that relationship you have with self. That forms the primary lens that you look out to the world
To the
that gives
world.
rise to your entire experience. So if we want to truly live a life that we love, it's not about changing the pieces out there. It's about shoring up this relationship we have with ourselves by
Yes.
taking a good hard look at what were those beliefs we took on and what can I choose to know instead.
Yeah, choice. So
Mm,
big in your book,
so big.
making intentional choices.
Yeah.
So, Amy, all guests answer this final question. I'm going to tweak it for you because you've had a lot of defining moments. So, because the podcast is called A Cup of Clarity, every guest always answers what's been a moment, a recent moment for you of clarity in your life, and what
Mm.
did it teach you?
Oh, so such a big one. So recently, so I am so in love with what I do and I feel so much joy and I feel so I mean, I just really truly feel like I'm living my purpose. I live a miracle every day.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing this, I haven't been I with all the amazing requests that come across my it's like I say yes because I'm like if I could do this, why not? Like this is going to help
Right.
you. This is going to make the world a better place. And so in the process of saying yes, I've recognized that that also means that I'm saying no to my family.
Mm,
And I had a bit of a breakdown. Actually, shortly after that whole satellite media tour, I had so much on my plate. I'm like, I have not seen my kids for 2 weeks. That is unheard of. This is
yeah.
unacceptable. And then I went to a dark place. Oh, they're growing up. They're going to be out of the house. And so,
But that's good. You got to get it out.
yeah.
You
Oh,
can't
I
keep it
did. I did.
inside.
My husband was so loving and understanding. But what I saw was, as I offer this work to everybody, I continue to do this work myself. And, it's about really being clear about what's a hell yes and what is maybe not right now. So,
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah, you got to take
mhm.
care of yourself because if
Yeah.
you're going to be continuing to light the world as you're doing through this wonderful book, you have to be filled yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
first and foremost.
That's right.
So I always like to not play, but just have some fun with a recommended segment. So I'm going to give you the names of 3 different categories, and you just tell me what you recommend in each. So the first one should be easy. It's a
Okay.
book. So other than Living on Purpose by you,
Yeah.
what's a book that you feel everyone should read, Amy?
Oh my gosh. I think right now, the one I'm reading right now, mind blown. Widen the Window by Dr. Elizabeth Stanley.
Ooh,
Phenomenal. Totally
what's it
phenomenal.
about?
Yep.
I'm not familiar with it. What's it about?
It is healing the body through trauma, not trauma like in
Mm,
the way that we think about it, but just being human. We're taking on all this trauma and it's the mind body connection and how it gets stuck and how it shows up and what's actually going on in the brain and the body and the psychology and what true healing really is about. I mean,
wow.
I'm hooked. This book is fabulous.
Isn't that exciting when you
Yeah.
find something that you just can't wait to and you're resonating
Yeah.
with it
Well,
so much?
and the best part and the worst part is it's making me rethink a lot of this stuff I actually believe because I'm like, oh, does this actually work? I'm not sure. So anyway, I love it. I love Adam Grant, and he wrote that book, Think Again, I think it's called. Yeah, Think Again, the about question your thinking. And so I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this is making me question my thinking. So I
Well,
think that's a
that's
good
good
thing.
because yeah, I was going to say it's doing something right. It's helping you grow and expand.
Yeah.
What about a product, Amy, that you use or love? It could be any kind of product.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is gonna be hilarious. So I always recommend this to everybody that's willing to hear me. But lanolin cream that you usually use when you're breastfeeding. So
Okay,
this is the
yes, I
best
remember
lip
that.
product. I have been using this ever since I had my first child. And once you use lanolin cream, you will never, ever, 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 ever go back to any because you just need to put this
Chapstick or
on once
anything
in a
like
day
that.
and you're done. You don't get addicted to
Yeah,
all of that other
those
stuff.
were a lifesaver when my daughter was
But you know
born.
what? Do it for your lips. Only get it for your
Yeah,
lips. And then
yeah,
it's
I'm going to look
amazing.
into it. Thank you. And I mean, I'm assuming with the way you told me about your schedule, there's probably not a lot of time to watch things on Netflix, but is there something that you are currently watching or watched before that you'd like to suggest,
Oh my
you'd like to
gosh.
recommend?
So I'm gonna the one thing that my family we love to do after dinner is we're always watching a series that we
Mm,
absolutely love, and we were just talking, we love Ted Lasso. I mean, who doesn't?
My
So that's something
sister
you
did, and I
have.
haven't watched it, but my
Oh,
sister
what?
simply adored that series.
You must. Okay,
I
Jeanette, like
must.
you
Okay,
promised me tonight, you start
I
that
will.
series. You will get so hooked. And see it out. You got to get through at least 3 or 4 before you get really hooked. Just
Okay,
promise me on that one.
I
Yeah.
will. I'll email you to let you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to say that is my happy place. We're waiting for the next season to come out.
Very good. All right, Amy, Living on Purpose. It's been out for a while. Where can everyone get your book?
Yeah. So best place is probably go to Amazon because you can also get the audiobook of which I got to narrate, which was awesome. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we've got the audiobook and the Kindle. So Amazon's probably the best place, but you can get it at Barnes and Noble, Target, really anywhere books are sold.
That's great.
And my website, which is alwaysonpurpose.com. Yeah.
So once again, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, I feel like I know you a little bit before you got here just from reading your book. And thank you for putting this amazing work out into the world.
Thank you so much.
And for you, the listener, thank you for joining Amy and I on this episode. I hope it sparked the insight within to living your life on purpose every day. To learn more about Amy, you can visit her website at www.alwaysonpurpose.com or give her a follow on social media, Amy Eliza Wong, so you can learn a little bit more about her and her work. And remember that you can also watch the full episode on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Jeanette Melian. Until next time, I send you love and light. May your cup be full and overflowing.